Please be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the University Marshal, Dr. Christopher Beadle.
I'd like to now ask a few special guests to stand. These are board members of Vets Helping Heroes. Don Werner, the chairman, just all stand and we'll applaud at the end. Louis Molina, Charles Morgenstein, Pat Levinson, the executive director, Robert Engelman, and Mel Pollock. Mel is a retired U.S. Air Force colonel who was a 6-year POW in Vietnam, held in Hanoi Hilton. And also the significant other of our guest speaker, Doris Tamarkin. You're getting ready to hear a great story in a few minutes, and all these people are a part of the story. So thank you all for being here today to support. I now have the pleasure of conferring an honorary doctorate in humane letters on a truly extraordinary man. A member of the greatest generation, Irwin Stovroff was a bombardier during World War II. His plane was shot down over Nazi-occupied France, and he spent 13 months in a POW camp. He was awarded the Purple Heart, the Distinguished Flying Cross, and the French Legion Medal of Honor for his wartime service. Upon returning home, he got married, raised a family, and had a successful career in business. At the age of 75, Irwin retired and began a new career as a volunteer at the VA hospital in West Palm Beach, helping fellow ex-POWs file pension and medical claims. Then he went a step further and looked into helping some seriously wounded veterans of the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq get professionally trained service dogs. Upon discovering that the federal government did not fund such a program, he took the mission into his own hands, establishing a nonprofit organization called Vets Helping Heroes. Now, at age 92, he continues to be actively involved with this enormously important program, remaining focused on helping others who have put their lives on the line for their country. In a few moments, Irwin will tell you more of his deeply inspiring story. He's accompanied by his own service dog, Cash. Cash is not used to crowds over 1,000. So. It is indeed a privilege for me to present the honorary doctorate in humane letters to Irwin Stovroff. Joining me in placing this doctoral hood over Mr. Stovroff's shoulders is Dr. Gary Perry, the Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs. By the authority vested in me by the Board of Trustees, I hereby confer upon Irwin Stovroff the honorary degree of Doctor of Humane Letters with all of the rights, honors, and privileges thereunto appertaining. Congratulations.
See, about there, fine. There we go. Hello. Before I tell you my story, I want to congratulate you. And something very special happened recently. University President Keeley created a new program, one of many, but one brand new program for every student in college. The program is called Flight Planning. When I heard that word, flight planning, I thought, this is incredible. Because what the program is for you and the future students is that every step of the way there will be something that guides you toward graduation. And here is the funny thing about it, is that a long, long time ago, I decided that I too would have flight planning. And my flight planning began when I volunteered to become part of the United States Air Force. And this thing happened. My brother before me had, a year before, had volunteered to be in the Navy. And so he was in submarine service, and I'm going into the Air Force. And my dad used to say, I raised two sons. One nut went up and one nut went down. And my beginning of my flight planning was basic training, and then I had cadet training, and then I had flight training, and then I had bombardier training. And after graduating from my bombardier school, I was given a commission and my wings, and I joined with 9 other people. We became a 10-man crew in a B-24 bombardier, 4-engine, high-altitude bombing. After that, we trained together for about 1 month, and then we were assigned to the mighty 8th Air Force in England. And within 2 weeks, we flew the northern route to England, going through Greenland, Iceland, Scotland, and then finally to our base in Norwich in England, and joined the 44th Bomb Group. We were there for about 3 days, and during those 3 days, they were preparing us for combat. About a few days later, 3 o'clock in the morning, my crew and I were woken up and said, gentlemen, dress for combat. Today is going to be your combat day. And we did. And 5 o'clock, we were at a briefing. And at the briefing, we heard the news, today is D-Day. Now, you know what D-Day was? This was the invasion of Normandy. This was the beginning of the destruction of Hitler and the Nazi Party. Well, it was really something. I got into the air, and I realized that I was among over 100,000 veterans or soldiers fighting. We were in the air, they were on the ground, they were in the Navy, and when I flew over the channel, and I saw a view that I could not believe and will never forget. And what I saw was nothing but ships and boats, and the Navy included, all the way across to Normandy just before the invasion. On my first mission, what we did was we bombed behind the German lines, destroying all the equipment that they had brought up in case of an invasion. Now, when I started to fly, we were told that we would fly 25 missions. And about 15 missions later, the fatality rate was very high. And every time a plane went down, 10 men went to their death. And so they told us that they needed us to fly 30 missions. So we knew we were going to fly 30 missions. And then they finally advised us that we had to fly 35 missions before we'd go home. Well, we had bombed basically every major target in Germany. And on my 35th mission, they gave us a short, what we called a milk run. It was just over the channel, and we were supporting the British troops who could not break through. So we were about 15,000 feet, and we were heading in as a lead plane into the target, which were bridges, and the Germans opened up with anti-aircraft and 88 millimeter guns developing into flak, and they hit our number 1 and our number 2 engine. Fire broke out immediately. And then the hydraulic system began to fail. So I dropped the bombs through the bomb bay doors, which opened the doors for the rest of the crew when they were going to bail out. I then put on my chute. My navigator was next to me, and we both jumped out of the nose wheel. And I counted to 10 and said, please open up. And it did. And it was a beautiful, white, beautiful parachute. Whoever packed it for me, I thanked him every day. Oh, and then as we were floating down, shall I say, it suddenly dawned on me, I'm going to be in the front lines, and I'm going to be captured. And I thought the best thing I can do, my dog tags identified me for being Jewish. And if you know from history what Hitler and the Germans did to the Jews. So I decided I'd get rid of my dog tag, and I did. And when I landed on the ground, of course, I was captured immediately, and so was my whole crew. They took us to a cemetery. I don't know what for. I remember looking over my shoulder, and there were bodies in there. And finally, the German officer said, 9-9, we do not kill our prisoners. And they did not. 2 days later, I was taken to Paris, and from Paris, I went to Frankfurt, Germany. And there, an impossible story happened. And believe me, you can make up a lot of stories. I can't make this one up for you. What happened is, I had a German officer who was interrogating me, and he spoke perfect English. It was just unbelievable. There was no accent, nothing. And I wondered about him. And after 3 days of interrogation in which I gave him what I was told to do, my name, rank, and serial number, because I didn't know anything else until we flew on a mission, he said to me, Lieutenant, I know who you are, and I know what you are. When he said that, I said, oh, I'm in trouble. He knows what I am. And he said, let me tell you something about you. He named my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my grandmother, the grammar school that I went to, the high school that I went to, and the theater where I had ushered in summertime. And I couldn't believe it. And I said, I don't understand, sir. And he said to me, well, you see, you lived on Claremont Avenue in Buffalo, New York. And my parents lived on Ashland Avenue in Buffalo, New York, which was the street over. And he said, you were their newspaper boy. Can you imagine that? It's this unbelievable story. And 2 days later, he had me put in a boxcar with about 50 other veterans. We were taken all across Germany, and I ended up on the Polish border in Stalag Luft 1. And it was always cold there, always cold. To live as a prisoner of war is what you learn. You learn that you rely on your enemy for your food, for your clothing, for your shelter. It's not a very comfortable feeling. But we learned to live with it. We had to live with it. And fortunately, after the months I was there, the Russians broke through the German forces, and the Russians came and liberated us. We were now free, except for one thing. The Russians decided to keep us. Why, we didn't know. We found out later that the Americans were keeping Russian prisoners who didn't want to go back to Russia. So they kept us for about a month. And finally, at the end of the month, a deal was made, and the Air Force sent in cargo planes, and the cargo planes picked us up and back to freedom. Now, we were free in France for a few days, and then back home to the States. I left the military at that time. There was a GI Bill for college education for veterans. I immediately took advantage of the GI Bill. I went to the University of Illinois. I spent 3 years there. I graduated, met a wonderful lady. We got married, had a family, and for the next 45 years, I traveled representing a furniture company. I traveled locally, I traveled nationally, and I traveled internationally. And at the age of 75, I retired. And my flight plan said to me, go to the VA. Go and help those that can't help themselves. And I did. And I became, with a friend of mine, Ray Nisley, the two of us, we became national service officers for POWs, our fellow POWs, and they needed pensions, they needed medical help, they needed personal help. And we did that, and we did that with over 400 ex-POWs. And then I heard that there was help needed in the blind rehab program. And I went to a meeting, and that's when I discovered, for the first time, that our government did not have funds, any program for funds, for our blind and disabled veterans needing a dog. I had a dog all my life, and I said, this is for me. And they asked me to find an organization that was raising and training dogs, and then see what we could do to get dogs from them, what we needed money. So I did. I went to Smithtown, New York. I found an organization training and breeding dogs and getting ready for civilians and veterans if possible, but it cost money. So I went back home, and I went to every single veterans organization that I knew. And all of them came together with me, and we raised about $100,000 in 3 months. And I realized then that this thing was really important and people would understand it. And then the word I left my vocabulary, because from then on it became we. And you saw my board members, and we together. I have a retired Major General. I have the Colonel who spent a lot of time with Vietnam. I have a Major. We have a Captain from the Navy. We have a marvelous professional newsmaker, filmmaker, and a lowly lieutenant, which is me. And then we put together organizations. And we now have 5 different organizations that are raising, breeding, training, and raising dogs, and we supply the funds. The organizations are able to train dogs if the vet is blind, if the vet has lost his limbs, if the vet needs seizures, has seizure problems, if the vet has lost his hearing, if the vet has post-traumatic stress disorder, which PTSD, which I'm sure everybody has heard about, TBI for traumatic brain injury, and also facility dogs for the hospital, for the Veterans Hospital. As a matter of fact, we have one right here in West Palm Beach. 2 years ago, we gave a beautiful black lab called Bruce. And 3 months after that dog was there, the doctor called me and he said, you know, Irwin, all my patients' blood pressure has gone down. We now have raised over $4.5 million. The dogs are not inexpensive. A dog for PTSD would be around $10,000, and it goes all the way up a scale depending on the seriousness of his wounds. They could be $60,000 for a blind dog. But when you think about it, that dog is so marvelous, because what happens, and I could tell you cases which I'm not going to do today because it's your graduation, but I can tell you this. If we have a blind veteran and he's giving up in life and he is suicidal, we can prove to him, if he'll listen to us, that we'll give him mobility, we'll give him companionship, we'll give him transportation, we'll give him everything he needs in life. And that is the beauty of our organization called Vets Helping Heroes. And now I want to congratulate you, each one of you. And I want to tell you something. Stay with your flight plan. Stay with it. Take it every step of the way that you can. And for the goals that you have in life, reach up as high as you can. Put them way up there. And when the time comes, reach up, and they'll be there for you. Thank you. so many of you here, I'd like to pass out in the audience.
Wow. What a great story, and what a great person. You're just a real inspiration for all of us, Irwin. Thank you so much for being here with us.